Hi there, welcome back to this Geo-Surface tutorial video. And in this video, we're going to look at the validation process. So we're going to try and understand how Geo-Surface Pro actually validates and tells you whether or not your proposed system is going to work in the real world. And what we're looking for here with any agricultural drainage system is we need it to conform to a few different key principles. Firstly, obviously water wants to go downhill, so we need to maintain a downhill slope and we need to maintain the minimum grade. And we looked at that previously when we set up the drainage parameters with minimum gradients there. Your drains also need to conform to whatever you set your minimum and maximum depths to be. So if you got to a point, for example, where either a tile was going to be too shallow or too deep, or a surface drain maybe ends up getting really, really deep, that could mean that your system is invalid. It's not going to work within your parameters. And likewise, when you're making a connection, we need to make sure that the connection point is either at or above the part of the main drain or the main tile or the sub-main that it's actually connecting to, because there's no point in having a connection that has to be connecting deeper than the main at that point. It's impossible, and again, that will invalidate your design. So what we're going to do here is, again, I'm just picking a random field. This time we're in the US and we're in Iowa today. And I'm going to draw I'm going to start with a tile, and then I'll show you again with some surface drains as well. So I'm going to say that I'm going to run a tile main kind of along this natural water run here, because I think that's probably going to be a pretty good location for my main. And what you can see here is right away it's turned it's turned green, but what I'm most looking at here is that it's showing me on the profile below, if we just turn on and off some of the different lines, you can just click on the names here to turn them on and off. So you can see here, let's just have a look at the blue line is the elevation profile, so that's the surface as we drew. So that's the terrain, that's the surface as the LiDAR data in this case is showing it. And then the green line here is our minimum depth, because in my settings I said I want my minimum depth for main to be 36 inches, and the pink line is the maximum, and I set that to be 60 inches. So again, what we want is our tile to try and be within those two as close as possible. And in this case, I've also got my target depth set to 36 inches here as well. So if I turn on the best fit line, and then I can even turn off the minimum depth line, you can see now that the best fit line, that red line, that's what your grade control system, if you went and drove this route out in the field with your RTK, it's going to do something very similar. It's going to work maybe slightly in a different approach to this one, but this is what you should end up getting something very similar to. So again, our best fit line in this case is mostly following the minimum depth, because they are the same. The target depth is 36, the minimum is 36. And there are just a few places here where looks like we'll go slightly deeper, but we're always within our target range here. So what you'll see is that if your system is good, you won't see anything. There won't be any X's or exclamations or anything like that. You won't see anything suggesting that there's a problem. And that's what you want to see. That means that this is a valid run. To show you what it would look like otherwise, let's just draw another one. And in this case, it looks like there's a bit of a feature here. So let's imagine that we were going to try and draw a tile straight through that one, and you can see immediately we've got all of these little crosses on here, and that's because we started down here and we were quite low-lying land, and then we went straight through a ridge. So you can see what's happening here is as we go straight through the ridge, it's impossible to maintain the minimum grade without going deeper than our maximum depth. So wherever you see these little crosses on your line, that means that you have a depth violation. It means that your run is too deep. And depending on how severe that is, you may be able to fix it, or it may just mean that that's an impossible run. In this case, this is probably an impossible run because I would have to increase my maximum depth to probably about 10 or 12 feet or something like that for this to be allowed. Let's have a look. Let's just go to even at 120. So there we go, 130. We'd have to be okay with putting this tile in this case, up to 130 inches deep in order for that to be viable. So obviously not realistic, but just to show you that that's how that works. So again, whenever you see any red X's, it means that you have a depth violation. You may be able to fix it just by tampering with your minimum and maximum depth, because you'll also see it if there was a chance that the tile would be too shallow as well, you'd also get a depth violation there. So if you saw that, you might have to maybe decrease your minimum depth or try and increase the maximum to something realistic. In this case, that's not a viable run, so I'm just going to delete that one altogether. But you'll find this a lot, and a lot of design is just working out those little adjustments. So you might say, in order to make this one run work, there might be one small part of the run where you have to accept that you'll be a little shallower or a little deeper than you would ideally like, but your alternative is probably not to have that run at all. So again, it's kind of a balancing act. And then the other kind of validation that we do here as well on your system is connection validation. So let's just draw a lateral coming off that main. And you'll see now that both of them have inherited a check mark. And that means now that because we've got a couple of different runs on the system, we can actually see them now in the drop down here. They're both green. And that's what you're looking for. You want them both to be green. And if they're green, that means that they're conforming not only to depth violation, but also the connection has been validated. And if we go and look at the T1 main, we'll see that the connection is above the install elevation of the main. So that's what we want. You want your laterals to be connecting ideally into the top of the main to give you the best flow. But it will still validate even if they're coming in actually at the same elevation. Again, it's less desirable, but sometimes you don't have a choice. And to show you what happens when it doesn't line up, let's just maybe change our depths here. So let's just say on that one we were going to make it much, much deeper. So if I was targeting 60 inches with that lateral, and I was going up to 120 inches of max, if we go and look at this main now, we'll see that the connection has come in way below the main. Remember, the main is going to be installed at the red line, so that's that best fit line. The connection is now way down here at almost at the max depth line in this case. So that is an issue. That would be a problem because it's not viable to connect a lateral below the main. You can't come in deeper than the main. You can't tee in below the main. It's not possible. And that's why we're getting this error here. So now our system is it's showing us purple here, and that's telling us that there is a problem. It's not green. Two ways to overcome this. Again, you might come across it sometimes. The first would be to actually try and increase the depth of the main a little bit. In this case, we'd actually have to go to 60. And we'll see if that would work. So in that case, yeah, if there was no other way, if we couldn't make that lateral work without the connection depth being so deep, then we would have to try and increase the depth of the main. And what that would give us then is this main would now have to have a starting depth of 60 inches, which may or may not be viable. But again, It's all about building the system that is viable as a system. And your other option would be to change the parameters of the lateral, probably reducing the minimum depth to try and see if there was any option to raise it up a little bit so that the connection would be slightly higher. But again, it's a trial and error process in a lot of cases. Not every field is super easy. But that's how that works, and the idea behind the system is that you're going to build, maybe you can build a system with 100 runs or 200 runs, and you're looking for everything to be green. And again, you're going to work through maybe run by run. If you've got some that are showing up with some issues, you can go and try and fix those so that your overall target is going to be to set everything up so that it is green and everything validates.